All right, to pull this clutch off on this Yamaha 200 Tri Moto, we've got a 1.1" socket here that we've turned off of here, and just kind of hang on to this clutch while you're doing that, so you're not spinning that motor around when you don't need to be. And then what you do is there's on this clutch basket, if you try just pulling up this clutch wherever it's at, you'll end up hitting this clutch basket because of the gear down below the centrifugal clutch. So you want to find this half moon spot and put that clutch basket right in the center of this, and then you'll be able to pull that up. And sometimes this can be a bit of a challenge to get off. Sometimes it takes a lot of this, but double check a couple times to make sure you're still lined up in that same spot on the clutch here. You see those teeth clear that when it's on that groove spot. We got your centrifugal clutch here. Here's your inner shoe pack, and then here is your clutch housing. This has a one-way gear inside of there. You want to make sure that is working. Make sure your clutch isn't grooved. Then we've got your primary clutch here, and looks like 4 bolts to remove here. We'll go ahead and remove them. These are spring loaded, so I just do them all out a couple turns. And I pull these springs off. And then underneath up here, we've got another one of those keepers that you've got to flatten with a screwdriver. Take a 24mm socket, and I like to hang on to this clutch here just to keep that spinning as well. Take your keeper out there, and then what I do is put these springs back in here, put these bolts back on, and snug these up. And you don't have to get them really tight, because when we put this motor back together, we'll have to pull them off again, but I'll show you why we do this. Now we're able to just take that clutch and pull up just the clutch pack there. Basket stays, you see that? Where your friction and steel plates are here, all that stays. So, and the reason why we can't pull the entire basket out is because these grooves on here have to line up with the grooves on this shaft here. So if you were to set this back down here and line these up perfectly, you could pull this clutch basket out then. We've got a couple Phillips screws around the outside. We've got your oil pump down there. I'm going to use the impact driver to remove these. And it looks like 3 bolts. We'll see if that's it here in a second. Oops. And then we'll take and tap on that. Alright, we're able to lift those. That's called the adapter, the crankcase cover. That just pops right off of there. So, got another handful of Phillips to remove on this oil pump here. What we have to remove is just the 3 that line up with the holes. So if you can see all 3 of these screws, you're in the right position. There's one more screw that kind of holds that pump together. We don't actually have to do anything with that one. All right, once those 3 are out, you can just kind of pop that off of there. And it's sealed with a gasket. That is on there. Popped off there, so kind of a challenge to get that one off. That gasket seals up really tight. So got your shift shaft here. You saw that we pulled that circlip from the other side. If this is bent at all, or that can make it a little more challenging to remove it. So we'll tap it from the other side or kind of see what's going on with it. We've got a couple more bolts here we've got to replace or remove. Here's a circlip or a snap ring on this crankshaft gear here. And these are spring-loaded gear. A lot of times they don't come out. A lot of times they come out in 2 pieces. We'll see how this works today. This top gear is generally pretty easy, but this bottom one here will a lot of times come off without the springs, which is okay. We can put the springs in after the fact, but a lot of times this inner part of that gear will stay with the crank when you pull that, and you'll just pull the bearing and everything with that crank when we remove that to rebuild it. Every other one, I believe, has a pin going through the spring, so keep that in mind going back together. Flatten the keeper on this Crankshaft Balancer gear. .24mm on this one. This one you want to try to hold. And that gear came off. This is the balancer gear here. This is the Crankshaft Balancer. You'll see that when we get into that case, how that looks. We've got a Torx here we need to remove and a couple Phillips around the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that Torx now on that shift drum, just to get that out of the way. You can use an impact on here. I like to use ratchet if possible. An impact generally will really slam that shift drum, and it's kind of a common problem for those to break, those shift drums. They've got a keeper in there, and a lot of times those will snap if you hit them with an impact really hard. So I like to just remove them with a ratchet, or at least get them loosened with a ratchet. start. It'd be a lot easier to see this if this shift shaft was out of here. Alright, that's out. And then you saw that pin that I was talking about. There's a couple of them. So sometimes those can break if we don't, if we spin that shaft. There is a circlip on that shift mechanism, so you want to make sure you get that pulled. And this, I don't know if there's just some buildup on it, on this case here, or what the deal is, but that's kind of where it got stuck last time. And it really doesn't matter, we're going to be able to split that case without that being completely out anyways, and that'll just help us be able to pull that. Make sure you don't have any more bolts. I was going to show you how to remove this drain plug. I'll flip this up so you guys can see it. This drain plug here, what we're going to do with it is just take a chisel like this and take it, and I like to make a groove, so kind of a down motion to start. And then once you get a little bit of a groove in there, again, this is, obviously you're going to need to replace it. Once you get it started, a lot of times, it'll come off no problem. And it's spring loaded, so they can catch pretty easily. All right, finally got that out of there. There's a spring and then there's a screen in there that needs to come out as well. And we can use pliers on that if we need to, otherwise we can wait. We just don't want to crush it. Otherwise we'll have to replace that. It's sealed with an O-ring, so sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge. So now we're going to split this crankcase. There's a couple places on this crankcase that you can fit a chisel or something. You obviously don't want to hit it too hard, but it doesn't take much if you can hit in those spots. And you don't want to go too deep. About a 1/4 inch deep is all you want to go. But a lot of times that makes it really nice to be able to stick something in there and pry on it without having to worry about damaging gasket areas. You don't want to damage the start area either. And this one is coming apart very well. I didn't grab my rubber mallet to tap on that, but it's coming apart fairly easily. If need be, you can grab a rubber mallet and tap on these shafts here, and that a lot of times will break it free completely. Those shafts just kind of bind up in there. And I'm not having to put any kind of force at all. Basically just enough to pull it apart there. And I like to try to keep all the gears on one side if possible. That way I kind of keep everything intact for going back together. But there is the split crankcase there. We've got your balancer gear here. And that'll just slide out. That's the gear over here that I was showing you about. Your shift mechanism here. Still kind of being difficult, so I don't know if we've got a burr on there or what the deal is, but I've got a shift fork that fell out of place there, sat down on the bottom side of this drum. And then here's a shift shaft with 2 more forks. Here's your shift drum. And that has the pins. That's the star that we pulled out. Oh, back over here. And this has the pins, so we want to make sure we get those pins back in there. We've got 2 shafts right here with gears on them. So main and secondary. So those are them. And when you get that crank out, rubber mallet, tap from the other side, and that crankcase is split.